What a mad couple of days. Summer Game Fest was mental, and we did some live coverage on some of the main events, and I'll put the link for the playlist in the description below. And I did some shorts on my top picks from each event as well. But honestly, I had a major difficulty with that because how can I fit that many games in 1 minute? But the live reaction will have my proper thoughts on some of these and then some, so do check them out. But at the same time, I did have some general thoughts and some summaries around some of the secret things that kind of got hidden away there, and admissions and so on and so forth, and some of the coverage that we've had afterwards. So let's get right down to my thoughts on the events and what's going to happen in future potentially. One thing is for certain, this year there were so many amazing games shown. Honestly, I had so much difficulty thinking of what games are going to be my top choices. Mental. But one little thing that I noticed was a common theme across pretty much most games. I think console exclusivity, as we know it and understand it over the years, is going to become a thing of the past. Especially with this whole Xbox Anywhere, and especially in case of Xbox, they're not even tiptoeing around the subject. They literally had the brand of Steam and PlayStation slapped at the bottom of each trailer. Honestly, go back 10 years, you would have never thought this would ever happen, but it's happening now. And even in case of PlayStation, they've pretty much been releasing all their catalog onto PC for the past couple of years. And they did a bit of a cheeky one this year where a lot of the games that they showed had the PlayStation brand at the bottom. And when I was reacting to it, I was like, oh my God, 007 is going to be exclusive to PlayStation? Well, no, pretty much 75% of the games that were shown are multi-platform. And to be honest with you, I think the ones that are also exclusive are going to become available on PC at least. Probably not Microsoft platforms, but most likely PC. Well, actually, with Microsoft, probably you're going to see it on that whole, handheld device and so on, but that is not a bad thing. However, though, it depends on how it's going to be executed. So what I mean by that is, first of all, I think the next generation of the console, if there is ever going to be, is going to be the last classic generation of consoles that we're going to see. Because with this whole multi-platform thing, people are naturally potentially going to be buying less consoles of a different brands of like the traditional form, and that's probably going to lead to really high prices. And with Nintendo and their prices and so on, I think that's to be expected anyways. And I think that is going to potentially lead to people not really adapting them as much, and pretty much them getting kind of phased out. And also additionally, in terms of the subscriptions that you're going to see, it also dependent on how these kind of pricing is going to be done. I really do hope there is not going to be any extreme situation that we're going to see massive spikes in prices like we've seen with Netflix and so on, doubling their prices over the 10 years. It's just going to be unsustainable, because the argument about owning your software and kind of trading in is going to be a thing of the past. And if that's going to be happening, well, we wouldn't be in a position anymore to be able to afford crazy subscriptions, because we just can't trade them anymore. And I just hope it's executed in a kind of say consumer friendly-ish, because you're not going to expect too much fashion. And additionally, I do also hope in terms of execution on different platforms, there's kind of a universal performance. So we're going to have a less of a situation where one kind of a platform is performing so much better than others. And I think with this whole Unreal Engine 5 and pretty much most publishers really using that, I think we're kind of going to see that. So let's hope. Again, I love the whole ROG, Ally Xbox console, whatever they're calling it. I love that. Amazing, guys. I hope that I can own one. It looks hella sick, especially the X version is supposed to have an incredibly powerful CPU inside. So let's see how that runs as well, because I think that's going to set the tone in terms of the type of consoles we're going to see in future. And they literally, Microsoft also called it, and the next Xbox or whatever. It was weird. I think in terms of games as well, I think, as I said, we saw some incredible games, but at the same time, I felt there is a bit of too many fighting games. I don't know if you guys noticed it as well, if you watched the shows, but I think the success of Black Myth, Wukong, and Elden Ring and so on has led to a lot of dark fantasy and this just sort of like boss fights, you know, single fight style fighting games. And I don't mind them. Honestly, they look incredible. But at the same time, if there are too many, it's going to lead into this whole kind of a burnout. Do you know what I mean? And I just hope that we're going to see a bit less and less of them and more kind of refined versions of them. In my top fives, I kind of stayed away from dark fantasies ones pretty much, because not that they didn't look that good, it's because I felt that thing is just getting absolutely demolished these days. There's just far too many. I love the style of some of the samurai ones, but again, there were a ton of them shown as well. And also, one odd thing that I noticed, a lot of kind of other ideas like racing game and so on, there was nothing shown. Oh, actually, there was only Sonic Racing, I think, that was shown, which is a bit concerning. We usually have like Forza of some, you know, or something from Sony, but there was just nothing. As I said, I just hope there's not burnout with the specific types of games. We're gonna still see more and more kind of JRPGs and racing coming back into the fold, and at the same time as well, I think there is a bit of a feel with all these sort of things that were shown. So some of the publishers that kind of turned up, like Microsoft and Sony and whatever, they held back on their big hitters like Fable, Gears, not shown. Ghost of Yotei is going to be another event for Sony. Again, why? Do you know what? Call me old or whatever, but I love the old, you know, old school E3 style. I love the whole concept of having this one massive event like Oscars where we get to see the absolute bangers. It's just big show kind of thing, big event. It was just insane, and kind of spreading it out over the year, I'm not a huge fan. And again, I don't understand why Microsoft and so on held back on some of these things as well. I hope future in the next year events and so on, if Jeff Keighley is listening, please bring those games back, or request these kind of publishers to stop doing the event in a few weeks like Ghost of Yotei is doing. It's a bit meh. And also at the same time, there was a bit of a strange feeling not seeing Ubisoft or EA. I know there's a lot of hate towards them at the moment, but at the same time, I wanted to see Battlefield. I wanted to see like maybe EAFC, see what they're doing this year, or even what Ubisoft is up to. Is there gonna be a awesome project from them again? Maybe, but there was no presence from them. And actually, I didn't quite like the whole tone of Game Fest personally. As good of a show it was, I think it was over bloated in a sense that there was too many ads and so on, but there was a lot of very uncomfortable jibes at some of the big publishers. Don't get me wrong, before anybody gets mad, I think to a degree they absolutely deserve it. But I lost the count how many times in the whole Game Fest event there were mentions of indie developers, these small companies, how these small big companies are making it big and so on. It's like, all right, kind of relax. Like, you know, why are you keep taking a jab at these big companies? And some really outlandish, crazy comments were made. Like, don't get me wrong, Claire Obscure, as much as I suck at it and I've not reviewed it because I'm just terrible at the game for whatever reason, it is my Achilles heel. yeah, it was a fantastic game. It's become a critical success, but at the same time, to say that it was made by 30 people, yeah, 30 people were the main developers, but there were a ton. If you look on the credit for the game, there were a ton of third-party support teams that were working on them. They were going to hundreds. It's like, why make such an outlandish comment? It just seems odd. You know, it's very weird. And again, with their sort of split force and so on, split force, split gates too, and so on. The main guy, the CEO, whatever, the co-founder, came up and they had a bit of an awkward kind of conversation with the crowd and so on. And you know, I'm like this cool guy dropping mic moment. No, it wasn't. It was a bit weird, to be honest with you. And pretending to say, well, this game is free. Yeah, it is free. And yeah, we're doing it for the love of games. Yeah, the game looks great and my friends have been loving it. But at the same time, there's a ton of microtransactions for skins in the game, same as the big publishers. So very odd attempt in the whole Game Fest of constantly taking a jibe. I just hope there is a reconciliation between the whole indie scene and the big scene, and the crowd kind of come together for the love of gaming, guys. We want to see good games from big publishers as well. Why not? You know, we want them back on top, doing well, you know, giving us good games and so on. But, well, let's see. I think, as I said, overall, it was a hell of a fun show. Loved it. In my opinion, I think Microsoft had the best show because they went with right bangers at the start and a kind of a quiet period in the middle and finishing on, you know, a big bang as well. Bit annoyed at them for just teasing Persona 4. Come on, like, make it a bit longer, giving us a, you know, give us a date or something. Oh. But still love that show. I think Sony seemed a bit too short, and I didn't like the whole Ghost of Yota being separate out, but still loved it. Game Fest, there was a ton of amazing games shown, don't get me wrong, but it was bloated with so many ads, you know, with kind of selling Dune, like there was like a 4-minute section or whatever, you know, showing the game, saying it's out and whatever. It's like, I get it, like you're trying to kind of make the money for the show and so on, but it was a bit too much. But at the same time, the whole indie thing, they had an event for indie afterwards. Push them there. If somebody wants to give the love to the indie scene, there was a dedicated event for that. There was just so many random indie games fit in. I think the game lasted like 2 hours, which is just too long. Just far too long. And because there was just not kind of a break off between some of the games at times, I just felt like they could have done a better job. I think a more condensed version like Microsoft did. I think 1.5 hours is an absolute max a show that, you know, should go. 2 hours is just far too long. I was kind of snoozing at some points during it. You probably noticed if you watched the you know, my live reaction. But overall, I think great. I love the fact that E3 in one way or another is still alive, but I hope we kind of go back to, you know, the old ways of having more of the shows in one place rather than spreading it out. But overall, fantastic. Check my live reactions for the games and my thoughts in the, you know, the live section on my YouTube channel. Again, honestly, if I sit here talk about individual games, this will go on forever. Honestly, there was so many that I loved. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode of me covering stuff about gaming and so on. And if you have, smash that like button and do subscribe, because there's going to be more content on gaming, gaming tech, streaming, free stuff. So there's going to be a hell of a lot. And I will be also kind of live streaming EAFC. I'm also covering Dune at the moment. I'm going to kind of do an early review on that, early thoughts. And potentially I'm going to do something called Pile of Shame as well, where I cover games that I've kind of missed out and so on. So again, do look forward to those. But once again, thank you for joining. Hope you have a fantastic wherever you are, and peace.